Call of Duty has had some amazing runs with the Tavor model. We've had the MTAR in Black Ops 2 and Call of Duty Ghosts, and the TAR-21 in Modern Warfare 2, and I love those guns in those games. I love a solid bullpup rifle, and from what I've heard from people that have used the Tavor in real life, they actually say it's a very dependable, good bullpup. But Modern Warfare absolutely peed the bed with this. Now, if I get any sort of stats or numbers or real life facts about the TAR wrong, please correct me in the comment section. Instead of uploading a whole new video, I will pin your comment. That's how we do it on this channel. I am not a exclusive Ace Drifter type person. I review these guns from my experience and preference, although for the first time in this Weapons of Modern Warfare series, I went into a private match and did some testing. Also, shout out to my buddy Jake, who took a break from Warframe just before going on a Christmas vacation with his family to hop into a Call of Duty private match and let me shoot him over and over again to test shots to kill. Now, what I heard in Exclusive Ace's video when this gun first came out is that the gun is most comparable to the M4, so I decided to compare it to the M4. And that is some interesting testing. We'll get to that in a minute. The weapon did not hold up, just the spoiler, so if you guys want to see how bad it held up, just continue watching this video. First of all, though, from my understanding about bullpup weapons in real life, is that they can be the same full length, like the entire weapon can be the same length of a traditional AR, but it'll have a 3 to 4 inch longer barrel inside of it. So it could be just as long as an M4, but the barrel inside of the TAR could easily be 15 inches, while the barrel inside of the M4 could be about 11.5. And as we all know, if you know anything about firearms at all, barrel length is important when it comes to range and velocity. So if you're going to add a bullpup assault rifle into Modern Warfare, I think it should have a faster overall bullet velocity than something like the M4, and I think it should have a little bit more punch over range. Now, I remember in Battlefield 4, bullpup weapons had better hip fire. I don't know if there's anything like that going on in this game. That's not anything I could find in my testing, and also testing bullet velocity on 6v6 or even 10v10 maps is a little bit difficult, so I can't be extremely thorough with my testing, but from what I could tell with my testing, this gun does not get any benefits that I think the real-life Tavor would have, other than just having a smaller profile, which could maybe keep you hidden if you're trying to hide in a corner. You know, your barrel won't poke out as far around a corner, but that's not really something you should be choosing your weapon because of. Although I guess if you wanted to consider it, I guess it's worth considering. Now, I have a video coming out about the other weapon that released alongside this. I already did a pretty brief overview of it, the Holger 26, and I found out that weapon is almost statistically identical to another weapon in this game, and actually statistically inferior to another weapon in this game. And no, it's not the M4. The Holger just does not hold up against another assault rifle in this game, and that's going to be a whole other video. Whereas the RAM-7 is, in my opinion, a simply worse M4. But before we get further into that, let's quickly talk about my experience playing with the gun. I've been able to do pretty consistently well with this weapon on maps like Vacant, or Shoot House, or something like Piccadilly, something like that with a little bit more mid to close range engagements. I can do okay with the RAM. It doesn't feel terrible. Using the weapon doesn't hurt my head or anything, but I always felt like it was lacking something, and in fact, two of my friends that started using the RAM-7 had the exact same initial impression, which was, I kinda just wish I was using an M4. And I don't think that's because the M4 is overpowered, I think it's because the RAM is very close to the M4 in a lot of ways. So the M4 likes to fire about 19-20 rounds and then start going to the right. So you get this nice vertical recoil even with no recoil mitigating attachments, and then it'll start pulling to the right, with its last 10 to 11 rounds. The RAM-7, on the other hand, feels like it fires about 13 to 15 shots and then starts going to the left a lot harsher. Then the M4 goes to the right. You actually see here I can draw a house with these recoil patterns because they're very similar, but if you'll notice, the RAM starts kicking to the left sooner compared to the M4, so the RAM is definitely a gun you want to burst. Also, something I found in my testing, the RAM has less visual recoil or perceived recoil. It's easier to tell with a red dot sight here. I just think that it's shaking less. It's not kicking any less, really, but it's moving around less. The M4 is a little bit more dramatic in how it kicks, and I believe that is accurate to how a bullpup actually works. I've only talked to one person who has actively used a bullpup, and they said that it's a lot more controllable than a traditional weapon. The recoil comes right back into your shoulder, and it feels very, very smooth. At least that's what he said. And I feel like Modern Warfare nails that. The RAM definitely doesn't bob around as much. If you guys don't use certain attachments on the M4, if you're just putting a red dot on it, it actually bounces around quite a bit, and the RAM doesn't have that visual bounce and shake that the M4 has, and I think that's kind of interesting. I don't think it's the most interesting thing about the gun. I mean, visual recoil will only impact certain engagements. I mean, there are some weapons in this game that I think would be dramatically better with less perceived shake, like the Uzi or the EBR. They could have the exact same recoil pattern, but less weapon shake, and they'd be a lot easier and more fun to use. Same goes for some of this game's handguns. So the gun has less perceived recoil because of that less noticeable visual shake. And that's good. And that might be why I kind of felt more consistent with the RAM, is because of that cleaner recoil that you can perceive through your eyes and not really through what you have to control with your thumbs or hand. So that's cool. Makes this a good gun for hardcore, makes it a good gun for realism, anything that requires just a little bit more accuracy. But here's the problem. If you are playing core, you are going to require one extra shot to kill compared to the M4. My friend and I did testing, and at close range, mid-range, and long range, the RAM just needed an extra shot on the M4. And I don't think that's because the M4 is overpowered. I think the M4 is doing what an assault rifle should do. I don't think the RAM is doing what an assault rifle should do. And that really bums me out. Now, from what I've heard, the RAM fires faster than the M4, but in my testing, it's not enough. I'm sorry, the reason I feel like I lose gunfights with the RAM when I lose gunfights with it is because it's not putting the damage on target fast enough. So even though I've heard it shoots faster than the M4, I don't fully think it does to a noticeable degree. In fact, in Exclusive Aces testing, he found that the TAR shoots at 882 rounds per minute, and that the M4 fires at 833 rounds per minute. That's just not enough of an increase, in my opinion, to justify the fact that it's always going to take one more shot to kill than the M4, especially since the M4 also has going for it a more controllable recoil pattern. So what happens when you try to make these guns more accurate, right? What happens when you try to tune it for recoil control? Because these guns don't have a lot of side-to-side recoil, so what happens when you do that? I used comparable equivalent attachments on both the M4 here and the RAM-7, and the M4 pretty much goes straight vertical, and the right recoil, the curve to the right, is pretty much just not noticeable. And of course, this is a wall test where I'm dumping 30 rounds all at once without touching my stick. If you're controlling this recoil, if you're firing just the amount of shots required to kill, this is not going to affect you. The RAM did not see the same exact accuracy benefits as the M4, and I think that's a crying shame, meaning the RAM isn't just uncontrollable without attachments. Even with the same attachments as the M4, it's not as good. So no matter what you do to the RAM, it's not going to be more controllable than the M4. It only is going to fire a little bit faster than the M4, and it's going to require an extra shot to kill, and it has less attachment options. Gotta keep in mind that the M4 has a huge amount of attachments. It has, I think, the most attachments in the game. From integral suppressors, to 50, 60 round magazines, to 9mm conversion kits. That's really it. And of course you have the SOCOM rounds, but the M4 is just more customizable. When you customize it, it sees more benefits than the TAR. So even though the TAR is what I would say a good gun, it is an inferior gun to the most comparable weapon. Now, from what I saw in Exclusive Aces video, he said it kills faster, statistically faster, but we've all heard the saying, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Honestly, wall tests are not a great example of recoil control, because the recoil control is really going to be up to you, and you're going to be controlling your engagement ranges with the RAM. So that's going to be all up to you. The statistical time to kill doesn't matter. It's how accurate you are, it's how fast you are as a player. That's what your gunfights are really gonna come down to. But when it comes to hard testing, the RAM can get 2 headshots and 2 body shots at long range, which is not gonna be super easy to do because it's not as controllable. If you get 2 headshots and 2 body shots with an M4, it's going to kill at that range. The RAM won't do that. In fact, the RAM, even if you land 3 headshots, which is, again, kind of difficult to do, you're not going to kill at long range. So the RAM cannot stretch out to those ranges, the M4 can. So, M4 is more customizable, M4 has better recoil patterns, more controllable recoil patterns, slightly more visual recoil, but better damage at every range I tested the RAM. So the RAM is a slightly faster firing M4, which could statistically kill a bit faster in close range. And I say close range because at a distance, again, you don't have the super controllable recoil, so kind of put that out of your mind. I didn't do any range increasing attachments on these guns either, so all these shots to kill tests are done completely stock with a bunch of stabilization attachments so that I didn't have any idle sway throwing off my shot. So okay, when you want to use the RAM, here's what you gotta do, alright? This is very, very important. Build it for close range engagements. Just build it for that. This gun does not have any better hip fire, doesn't really seem to have any sort of better reload than the M4. It really is just a slightly faster firing M4. So if you were to build the M4 to be versatile, I would say build the RAM to be better at close to mid-range. So I would recommend Merc foregrip, a laser sight, stippled grip, and 45 round magazines. Anything that's going to allow you to win close range gunfights is going to be a winner on this gun. You could try to build it for long range, but that gets into that area, and I've talked about this in old I Need a Weapon episodes, I Need a Weapon coming soon. I used to say, if you are building a gun strictly to fight against its intended role, all you are using a worse version of a different gun. So what I'm saying is the M4 is better at range. If you want to build the RAM-7 for range because that's how you want to play with it, that's fine. But you're forcing it to do something it's not meant to do. You're spending all of your attachment points compensating for its weakness instead of playing it to its strengths, which sometimes works, but with the RAM, I'd say you could go for it, but I don't know. I've had some success with that with the longest barrel, monolithic suppressor, a foregrip, nice sight on it. I've had some success with that, but I felt like I was band-aiding a problem instead of really playing the weapon to how it's meant to be used. So again, hip fire attachments, aim down sight speed attachments, that's what I would recommend for the RAM. Just know that when you are using the RAM, I want this to be in the back of your mind the entire time you're using the RAM. You are using a worse M4. So how could Infinity Ward make it better? I don't think they need to nerf the M4. I think what they should do with the RAM is speed up the fire rate a little bit more, give it the option for a 50 round magazine, and speed up its sprint out time and its ADS time. Make it a really good close range weapon. That way it would fit into sort of an SMG AR hybrid, kind of the same way that the Holger fits an LMG AR hybrid. So let me know what you guys think about that idea in the comment section below. And let me know how you guys like the RAM-7. Did you guys expect for the weapon to be bad at each range? Did you expect it to be just as good? Let me know what you think down below. I will see you when I see you, kids. Goodbye.